The studio lights glowed brightly as the audience settled into their seats, buzzing with excitement. It was another taping of Stephen Colbert's popular late-night show, and tonight's guest was John Kennedy, a well-known political commentator famous for his sharp wit and outspoken opinions. Backstage, producers rushed through final preparations. Cameras were checked, microphones adjusted, and cue cards organized. Everything seemed routine. But no one knew the evening was about to take an unexpected turn. John Kennedy arrived 20 minutes before airtime. Dressed in a dark blue suit with a bright red tie, he greeted staff members with a confident smile. He had appeared on television countless times and felt completely at ease. Stephen Colbert was preparing in his dressing room when a producer informed him that Kennedy had arrived. "Great," Colbert replied. "This should be an interesting conversation." The plan was simple. They would discuss current events, recent political developments, and a few lighter topics to keep the audience entertained. As the countdown began, the audience erupted into applause. Stephen walked onto the stage, smiling and waving. "Thank you. Thank you very much." The crowd cheered even louder. After his opening monologue, he introduced his guest. "Please welcome John Kennedy." Kennedy stepped onto the stage and shook Stephen's hand. At first, everything appeared normal. The audience applauded. Both men smiled. The interview began with friendly conversation. They joked about travel, television, and life in the public eye. Laughter filled the studio. Even the producers relaxed. But then Stephen shifted the discussion toward a controversial topic that had dominated headlines throughout the week. The atmosphere immediately changed. Kennedy straightened in his chair. Stephen leaned forward. The audience sensed the tension. "What do you think about the criticism surrounding your recent comments?" Stephen asked. Kennedy smiled. "I think criticism is part of public life." "That wasn't really an answer." The audience laughed softly. Kennedy chuckled. Maybe because it wasn't really a fair question. A few people in the crowd reacted with surprise. Stephen raised an eyebrow. "Oh, so now I'm being unfair?" "I didn't say that," Kennedy replied. "You kind of did." The smiles were beginning to fade. The conversation became sharper. Each response seemed to provoke another challenge. Neither man appeared willing to back down. Backstage, producers exchanged nervous glances. One of them quietly lowered his headset. "This is getting uncomfortable." On stage, Stephen pressed further. "You've been accused of avoiding direct answers." Kennedy crossed his arms. "And you've been accused of interrupting guests." The audience gasped. A few people laughed nervously. Stephen smiled, but it was no longer his usual friendly smile. "You came prepared tonight?" "I always come prepared." The tension continued building. Questions became more direct. Answers became more pointed. The crowd could feel the temperature in the room rising. For several minutes, the discussion resembled a debate rather than an interview. Then came the moment that changed everything. Stephen asked a question regarding a recent statement Kennedy had made during a televised appearance. Kennedy immediately challenged the accuracy of the quote. Stephen insisted it was correct. Kennedy disagreed. Stephen signaled toward the production team. A clip was prepared. The audience watched on large studio screens. When the footage ended, Kennedy shook his head. "That's completely out of context." Stephen responded quickly. "It sounds pretty clear to me." "No, it sounds clear because you want it to sound clear." The audience reacted loudly. Some applauded. Others fell silent. Backstage, producers realized things were moving in a dangerous direction. The conversation was no longer entertaining. It was becoming personal. Stephen attempted to regain control. "Let's stay focused on the facts." Kennedy leaned forward. "I am focused on the facts." "No, you're focused on avoiding them." The crowd collectively inhaled. The room became incredibly quiet. For several seconds, neither man spoke. Then Kennedy stood up. Not dramatically, not angrily, but firmly. The audience watched in stunned silence. Stephen remained seated. "Are you leaving?" he asked. Kennedy adjusted his jacket. "I came here for a conversation." "And we're having one." "No," Kennedy replied. "We stopped having one several minutes ago." The studio became even quieter. Producers hurried toward the stage. One approached Kennedy and quietly spoke to him. Another producer walked over to Stephen. The cameras continued rolling. Nobody wanted to miss what happened next. Kennedy looked toward the audience. "I respect everyone here. Then he turned back towards Stephen. "But I don't think this is productive anymore." Stephen remained calm. "That's your decision." Kennedy nodded. "Yes, it is." With that, he began walking toward the backstage exit. The audience erupted into confused reactions. Some applauded. Others booed. Many simply sat in shock. The producers quickly cut to a commercial break. Backstage, the atmosphere was chaotic. Staff members rushed between rooms. Phones rang constantly. Executives wanted updates. Everyone was talking at once. Meanwhile, Kennedy sat quietly in a private room. His expression was calm. A producer entered. "Would you consider returning?" Kennedy thought for a moment. Then he shook his head. "No." Back on stage, Stephen prepared to continue the show. When the cameras returned, he addressed the audience. "Well," he said with a small smile, "that was certainly unexpected." The crowd laughed. The tension eased slightly. Stephen continued the program professionally, refusing to add fuel to the controversy. But by the time the episode ended, clips of the confrontation had already spread across social media. Millions of people were discussing what had happened. Some supported Kennedy, others supported Stephen. Everyone seemed to have an opinion. News outlets covered the story for days. Commentators analyzed every second of the exchange. Viewers debated who was right and who was wrong. Yet something interesting happened afterward. Several weeks later, both men were interviewed separately about the incident. Neither attacked the other. Neither escalated the conflict. Kennedy admitted that emotions had run high. Stephen acknowledged that difficult conversations can sometimes become heated. Both expressed respect for each other's success, and slowly the controversy faded. The moment became a reminder that even experienced public figures can find themselves caught in unexpected confrontations. Sometimes disagreements happen. Sometimes conversations go off course. But how people handle those moments afterward often matters more than the argument itself. In the end, the story was not really about who won. It was about the importance of respect, self-control, and knowing when a conversation is no longer moving forward. And for everyone who watched that unforgettable night, it became one of those television moments they would remember for years.